welcome, listeners, to That's a Good Card. Today, Ya will have the challenge of getting me to say, that's a good card. While Ya will be doing the convincing, I'll be playing the devil's advocate. If you're interested in more Tag C content, check out our Patreon in the link down below. We have extra podcasts, extra tiny little tidbit episodes, as well as other cool perks, so check it out. Now's a good time to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you're listening to us on YouTube, and please leave a comment below with your thoughts on today's topic, as well as a suggestion for our next card. All right, Ya, let's get started. What kind of spice have you brought to us today?
Thanks, Kyle. Today, we're going to talk about a card that was brought to us by one of our Discord members, Logan D, /critical EDH, as well as Bunny Joe Burton, one of our very first shoutouts. I haven't forgotten. I remember posting, and then you sent me a message one day that this person gave us a shoutout on a tweet, and I've kind of been following their decks ever since. And so,
yep. And I will say, yeah, I like how you said Logan D /critical EDH.
That's how the name is.
Logan, I know that's the name on Discord,
yeah.
But like it's just Logan. And then Critical EDH, shout out Critical EDH, is his content channel for CEDH that he's pushing. So we're gonna post links down below about that. What a weird way to say it.
I feel like I still gave him a good shout out. /critical EDH.
/ All right, sorry. Continue.
And actually, I kind of thought about this card, and it came to mind, and I thought we should talk about it today because you just told me about one of your tournaments recently where you just played through mid-range hell. And so the card we're going to talk about today,
which tournament? Past like
the
10?
most recent one, right? The card is Reverent Silence. It's a green card. It's sorcery. It's 3 generic pips plus a green, so 4 altogether. It says, if you control a forest, you may have each player gain 6 life instead of paying Reverent Silence's mana cost. Destroy all enchantments. Pretty simple.
Just a note, it's each other player.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't gain 6 life. Yep. Cool. What decks are we seeing it in?
This might be an all-time, fringe. Might be the most fringe.
I really wanted you to say all-time low and just give a shout out to an awesome band from my junior high school years.
Oh, wow. That's a callback. It's seeing play according to CEDH Analytics, which we know is a little bit slow to update. It's on there, it only lists 2 decks, Halden and Paco, plus a Thrast Jessica. A list which I'd never heard of as a pairing, but I guess it makes sense. But we know for a fact that Bunny Joe Burton mentioned it for, I believe, Rayhan and Rograk, a list that they have been really playing.
Tendrils. Mm-hmm. But it's just in the considering list.
Yes.
And that's the other thing I was going to point out here. I know we don't have a lot of listed out tournament play for this card, but Logan just took down Snowy Summit 2 playing Glarb with this card in his list. So huge shout out for taking down that tournament. Before this Snowy Summit tournament, we haven't really seen this a lot. Now, prior to this, in my perusing of the past probably 3 years of CEDH, I have seen this card many times in considering and sideboard lists. So this is something that has always been that card that you pick up and you look at it and you go, this is close. This is close. Like, I might test it. Maybe it sees some play in testing, but it ultimately has gotten cut over the years.
Yep.
So I think that there are a ton of 3 or less color green decks that have at least had this in a considering list at one point in time. I'll throw that out there. A lot of lists.
Actually, when I looked up this card as well, I saw a post 6 or 7 years ago talking about this card, and people at the time preferred. Actually, let's get into our points. So let's talk about why I think this card deserves to be in the main deck. And like I was saying, my first reason is that, again, I was looking through a post, and some people said that they preferred kind of spot removal because you don't want to necessarily destroy all enchantments. Blah 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 blah. But I think that everybody that's probably listening knows, especially if you've played in a tournament at all recently, like, you're not just seeing one Rhystic Study, you're seeing a Rhystic Study, a Smothering Tithe, a fish, and then somebody copies a Rhystic Study, a fish, or what have you.
Honestly, blame us. We just made the meta even worse by giving more publicity towards Mirror Maid. Holy shit, I saw so many Mirror Maids at my last tournament.
I know it.
The effect on the local meta is strong.
And so my first pro for this card is, are you tired of the mid-range hell and you're trying to storm off in green? Blow it all up. Blow it all up. Just say, blow it all up.
Kaboom.
Yes, this does technically hit your enchantments as well, but I would say that at a certain point in the game, you may have, even if you're in also blue and you're playing this like in a Kinnan list, you may have drawn all the cards you need and you just need to win, right? You already have the resources you need. You need to make sure you're not drawing your opponents into more ways to win. And so blow it all up.
Yep.
That's my first pro for this card.
Tired of mid-range hell? Be a part of the solution. That's your first point. Be part of the solution.
just say, nope, nobody's going to draw. Nobody's going to have any of those, right? Like, we're just going to reset that.
Play good, fair Magic as Richard Garfield intended.
Exactly. Shout out Sean. You know which Sean. Yeah, anything else you want to say about that?
No, I mean, the first point is just, I love it. I mean, let's appeal to the heartstrings of the community with your first point.
Yeah.
Tired of mid-range hell? Blow it up. Be
That's
part
literally
of the
my
solution.
note.
It's literally an anti mid-range hell propaganda. Here we go.
That's our speech.
I mean, that's a convincing point. I'll give it to you. Look, at the end of the day, we are part of a community, and if you're making this statement to play this card because you're like, you know what? F that. I'm part of the solution.
Yeah.
I'm blowing up every Rhystic Study I see.
Most people are going to try to slot in more copies. And so you're going to play into that, and you're going to need to make that meta call, right? And I do think that that's a really big, important part about this is like, if you're seeing like really fast and loose decks that are not playing that many, you may have one player playing a Rhystic, two player, like, again, I don't know where you live.
Hit me up.
Let me know.
Give me an invite to this pod.
Exactly. That was exactly what I was going to say. Wait, where is this? And let me know. Because I'd love to come by. Because chances are you're seeing multiple draw engines hit the stack, right? Most of the time it's it's an enchantment. The One Ring, yes, this doesn't hit the One Ring. I agree.
Stop rebuting points that I haven't even brought up yet.
Oh, okay.
Right? Come on, move on to your second point. Come on,
let's move on.
Go to your second point.
My second point is that this is kind of like a fun fact, but it is also a pro for this card. I kind of really like the alternate casting costs that you find in green. This one is, you're just giving people life. Mm-hmm. Right? And now you can cast
You're
it for...
like a doctor. You're healing people.
You're healing people.
Wow, a support character. Who doesn't love a support character on their team? Wow.
And that makes it so easy. A sorcery speed spell for free without wasting your resources when you try to storm off on your turn.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's a free spell. We love that. We love that in CEDH. I'm on record saying that many, many, many times. If you can cast it for free, sweet. And guess what? This card casts for free. You don't have to do a lot of convincing for me on this point. I'm not going to lie to you.
Right. And the fact that it's free means that since you're going to be blowing up Rhystics, you're going to be blowing up fishes, chances are you can at least pay for the Rhystics as you cast this, right? And so you're not drawing more free cards for folks.
Questionably so.
Questionably so, right? Like, it's still one of those removals that, yes, it technically can answer, but we've all been in those games. You're willing to risk it, right? Especially if you're trying to win in that moment. You just need, you know that if you try to storm off, there's a good chance that you can fight through some interaction, but every piece of interaction you're playing to protect yourself, you're also drawing people cards, and you just need to find a way to stop that. And this is free, plus you can play some of the taxes, maybe not all of it.
Yeah, I mean, counterpoint to that though is like, it's a sorcery, which means you have to do it on your turn.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So when you cast this, are you really going to be paying for the Rhystic Studies or the Mystic Remoras?
Probably not.
Then at that point, no, exactly, because hear me out. Because at that point, you're then doing nothing else on your turn. Is that what you're saying? So this is just clear all the enchantments off the board so that you can pass the turn to the next guy so he can win?
It also kind of depends. It kind of depends.
I think that no matter what, you're like triggering some Ristics when this thing hits the board.
Yeah, probably.
Otherwise, in your main phase, like you are not like this is CDH. You should be actively trying to win the game, or at least set yourself up to win the game every single turn. And I feel like playing this card, paying for a bunch of Ristic studies, and then it either resolving and cool, those things are dead, but then you have to pass the turn because you have no mana left, or it getting countered and you paid for all the things. So now all the things are still alive, and you still don't get to develop your board state. So I don't think it's 100% like you are playing this card in your main phase and then paying for a bunch of the taxes. I think you just let it happen one time and then start developing your board, because guess what? Like, how else are you going to win the game? Like, you have to get ahead. You have to use that tempo that this has created now, where you have effectively like reset the game. So I don't think, I mean, that's just my counter argument to the whole, like, you're not going to trigger or you're not going to give a card when you cast this, because I think you're definitely giving some cards.
I think most of the time, but I also think that if you're in green, and then the reason I put it in as a point is that chances are if you're in green, your win probably involves some kind of Gaia's Cradle loop, potentially, and like more creature combos. Maybe, right?
Or like a Kyrian Range or a Shia,
right.
Something like that.
The deck I'm going to slot this into is the Street Urchin Aranis deck, and so I know with that deck, I probably can afford to pay for at least 1 or 2 Ristics before I try to storm off, because my combo is creature based. Now, yes, you can say that I'm not going to necessarily need to cast any spells that way, but I don't know. It's just like, your point is definitely valid. I do think that most of the time, 90% of the time, you're going to feed at least 1 or 2 Ristics when you cast this. Definitely a fish. You're definitely going to feed a fish. You're not going to pay for a fish.
The fishes are going off.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like, that's just not going to happen. Unless it's super late in the game and you just have like infinite mana.
Which is also to say, that leads me into my last point, and I think this is probably, well, this is my last point. That even at 4 cost, it's not outlandish to cast.
Don't even. No, it is outlandish. What the fuck? Yeah, no shot. Why would you not cast it for free? That's crazy.
Because there is a what's that
Life
card?
Life totals matter?
No. No.
Vexing Bauble?
That's why. That's why a Vexing Bauble in play.
Oh my god.
Okay,
that's
what's
better
the other?
Than just you being like
Linvala, maybe?
No, Lavinia.
No, Lavinia.
That's what you're thinking of.
Right. Lavinia says you can't cast anything for free. You have to cast it for it's like, you have to tap things down.
Super rare occurrences.
Not that rare, right?
I guess Vexing Bauble is not that rare. Vexing Bauble has kind of like low-key become a staple. I'm surprised we haven't done a podcast on that card either, but now it's too good. You know what I mean?
Too good.
Like, it's too good for our podcast. We don't have to convince people that Vexing Bauble is a good card. That's been happening a good amount too recently. I'll get a lot of recommendations for cards,
but they're just good,
and they're just like bangers.
They're just good cards.
Like, I mean, like, yeah, that card's incredible, but I don't think we need to do a podcast on it. To tell
Nobody needs to be convinced.
It's really good. Yeah, like this is in like thousands of decks. I think we're chilling on this one.
I think that's a great point. Like Reverent Silence, I know this is an upwards battle, right? Like I think this is going to need a lot of convincing to get people to slot a card like this into their deck, right? Mm-hmm. I do think that this is a great meta call, right? Like this is definitely a 99th card that you slot in for,
I love it. Yeah.
For a tournament setting. And again, at 4 cost, if you have to get around a Vexing Bauble to kind of reset the game, it's sacrifices have to
position. Sure,
we've all been there.
Sure, if you've have we been there?
We've all been there. There's like 5 minutes left on the game, and going into a turn, like somebody like you need something to happen.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe it's one of those turns where like all you have is a Born Upon the Wind left, and then you Born Upon the Wind into Reverent Silence. Oh, I thought you were gonna bring that up. I'm not gonna lie. There's so many enablers now with Valley Floodcaller, and I'm giving you a point here. Yeah. I think this card slaps with Valley Floodcaller and Born Upon the Wind, just because like those cards are complete staples now.
Yeah.
Those cards are just too freaking good all the time.
Yep,
so if you're in those colors, this is super interesting because now you can use this to protect like against breach lines. Or to protect against food chain lines, right?
Address down.
I think food chain. Ooh. Yep.
Technically,
down. It won't work for the Valley Floodcaller, but if you have Born Upon the Wind, yes.
Yeah.
Because your Valley Floodcaller will be blanked out. But if it's specifically Born Upon the Wind, yes. But I don't know. I think food chain has been getting a slight resurgence.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the whole food chain wins games type deal that people are saying. So it could be interesting in a Valley Flood Color centric deck, maybe even like a Rog Thras. Also, I'll take this time to talk about, I don't know if I told you, did I tell you I went into the Rog Thras Discord and apologized for the Song of Totentaz
episode? You didn't tell me this. What happened?
No, I did. I went into so at one of my, this is a super tangent, but at one of my last tournaments I went to, a Rog Thras player walked up to me and was like, "Hey, just do you know that in your Song of Totentaz podcast you like pissed off a bunch of people in the Rog Thras Discord?" And I was like, "What? Why?" And they're like, and he was like, "Because you like just glazed over the Valley Flood Color synergy, but like that's like the main point of why it's so good." And then I was like, "Oh, I see."
No.
Is like, and then I was like, I definitely should have spent more time talking about the synergy between Song of Totentaz and the rats and Valley Flood Color. But I did not. So I went into the Discord and put like this apology letter. And then put the meme of Shaq that's like, "I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game." So shout out all the Rog Thras players. I don't know, maybe this is a fun one for them to look at just because they care so much about Valley Flood Color. It's pretty good. So it's like cast a spell, untap your bird, rat, otter, whatever it is. So it's pretty sweet. If that deck is so centric on it, then sorceries that have high impact sorceries might be more appealing. Is all.
I agree.
Cool. Any other points?
Those are my points. Let's talk about some downsides, Kyle.
Time to break it down. All right. I'm taking a different approach to my downsides.
Okay.
I'm mixing it up.
Okay.
All right. I got some feedback.
Okay.
Which was, don't talk about the points that are like obvious. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to take the low hanging fruit. Like, I'm not going to say sorcery bad. Everyone who listens to this podcast can make that distinction. Right. So instead, I'm going to do these fringe-er points, like stuff that's a little more fringe, but still relevant. That's what I'm going to try to do.
Okay.
Are you ready for the first
I'm ready.
Okay. First one is that to get the full effect of wiping the entire board of like a ton of enchantments, right? To get the full effect is like the Magic Christmas Dreamland. There's 3 Rhystic Studies out and a Smothering Tithe, and you're like, I'm going to absolutely nuke this board and get all of these enchantments gone. You're actively making 3 players at the table really mad. Like, you have created, by casting the spells, 3 enemies, and 3 people now want to stop this spell. So in the Magic Christmas Dreamland, it is now more difficult to get the Magic Christmas Dreamland because you have to get through counterspells from player A, player B, and player C, right? Whereas other spells, I mean, you know how it is when you're playing a game. Sometimes the spell is cast and it's a big spell, but like let's use Culling Ritual, for example. Culling Ritual can be, affect everybody, right? But sometimes people are in a position where they're like, I don't really care if this goes off, because it's like, oh, I don't really have anything that's 2 or less. I'm not really worried about this, so I'm not going to fight over it, right? In the Magic Christmas Dreamland for this card, if that's the case, and there's a Rhystic, and a Smothering Tithe, all of them are going to fight over this. None of them want to lose this. So now you have to get through 3 different people's counterspells in order for this to resolve. And if it doesn't resolve, then you're just healing everybody for 6, and that just doesn't feel great. It's like, not only did you not get your thing, but you're also making everybody else stronger, which isn't super relevant, but it's not nothing, So that's my first point, is just like, it's immediately you're making 3 enemies in order to get the highest return on the card. Thoughts?
Well, maybe this is just because it's me. I think that I make enemies of 2 people for sure, and I convince the first person in priority, the person right after me, that they're getting bullied, that if they waste they waste their counterspell on this, they should at least pass down to the next person and make the person in second or third seat priority. I'm gonna convince them that, hey, look,
you're gonna peer pressure them into priority bullying,
right? Which is true, right? Like, sure, the person wants to stop this, but like, are you gonna be the one that stops this, or are you gonna make them do it because they're waiting for you to stop this, right? And like, that's the thing I think that we play off of.
That's a difficult ask, though, because now we're leading into another point of like, you have to be confident enough to be able to convince people to do that. So if you don't think politics are a strong suit of your game, maybe then this isn't something that you can run. Just because, like, as another downside, it's like if you have to have that conversation every time this card comes down, the conversation of like first person and priority, you're like, hey, these other two people don't want this to resolve either. If you play your counterspell here, you are setting yourself way behind them. Like, having to talk like that and make that conversation is very difficult, because the second you say that, you know exactly what C3 and 4 are saying, right? They're like, don't listen to him. He just wants to blow this all up. We can keep all our stuff and it'll be all hunky dory. You know what I mean? Like, you can protect the table. The classic thing that we say in our Discord, you die last.
Right. And
if you protect my thing, you die last. Yeah.
And I'll even go, hey, look, Kyle, I'm going to make this sweet on you. I'm not going to pay for yours, but I'll pay for theirs. Right? You can draw a card.
So you just add more. But then you're just going down the slippery slope of like negotiating, and like maybe they're in a position where like they don't even have anything and you don't even know. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so
no, for sure.
Into things that you're negotiating into giving stuff for free when you don't actually know what's going on. So it just gets into a slippery slope. But that's my first point. Is just like,
totally fair.
This spell, to get to the highest point, like the peak for this card, it's like it's really difficult to get through 3 people. Cool. My second downside, which is even more fringe point. We're getting more fringe.
Yeah, this one's pretty fringe, yeah.
Is that it's not a permanent, which stinks for synergy with 6 specifically. Okay. And hear me out. 6, by the way, if you haven't seen that episode on that, please go check it out. It's one of our best episodes, in my opinion. It's an absolute banger. That's a good card. Anyway, 6 has become an absolute staple for green decks. A lot of green decks, their early plan is to stick an early 6 and just start feeding their graveyard. I mean, look, you've played with me a lot. Yeah. How often have I gotten like a turn 1 6, turn 2 6?
Pretty
and I'm
much
just cooking.
As often as somebody gets their risk study.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So it's a huge engine for green, and it sucks when you go for your attack trigger with 6, mill 3 cards, and it's just like instants and sorceries. Because you can't retrace them, right? It's like immediately you're looking for at least 1 land so you can bring it back to your hand and get that value. Awesome. And then the second thing you're looking for is just high value permanents that you can actually get to. It's actually the reason why a lot of Corvold players think about playing Invasion of Ikoria over Finale of Devastation, solely because of the 6 synergy. So like, this is relevant.
It's a permanent.
It matters.
It's a permanent. Yeah,
exactly. So Invasion of Ikoria is a battle, so you can cast it off of 6, which is super interesting.
It's a tutor wow.
And it does the same thing as the exact same thing as Finale. Not the exact same thing. I won't say that. But even though a lot of people consider Finale to be a better card in a vacuum than Invasion of Ikoria, the 6 synergy is what makes some people want to play Invasion of Ikoria over Finale. So similar for this card is just like, it's difficult to want to slot in sorceries if your game plan is early tutor for 6 and then vibe out from there, you know? It's just one less thing that you want to see or flip into your graveyard. But super fringe point, some would say, but at the same time, hey, I see 6 in half my games because I'm tutoring for it or I actively want it. So it's not as fringe as one might think. But that's my second point, is it's one valuable piece that 6 cannot retrace.
Tangent question for you.
Yeah, hit me.
Ever since our episode, what do you think the inclusion rate now is of 6, right? Because I think at the time, it was only in like maybe a couple hundred decks. What do you think it is now? 6.
It's way more. It's way more.
Yeah.
Way more. I'd probably put it in the thousands.
Yeah.
See it all the time. I have no analytics to back that up, but at the same time, I feel like if I see a green list, it's highly likely that there's a 6 in there.
I would agree with you.
It's just so good.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like a mini breach.
Yeah.
It's literally just mini breach. It's so good.
Anyways.
Cool. That's my second point. My third point is that it's not easily tutorable in green, which kind of stinks. This is removal. It's like a removal wipe. What do you call this? There's a magic term for this. Destroy all enchantments? It's not a sweeper. Oh man, how do I not know this? I don't know. Someone in the comments tell me what this kind of card is called. But anyway, it hits a lot of things at once.
Yep.
And sometimes these kinds of cards are the kinds of cards where like the board state turns into this and you're like, oh my God, I wish I had this card. I wish I had Reverent Silence right now. Right. It would be absolutely incredible right now. Same kind of feeling that you have when there's like a shitload of tiny creatures on the board and you're like, I wish I had a Toxic Deluge. Yep. Or like somebody has like a million rocks and you're like, I wish I had a Culling Ritual. it's one of those high impact cards in very, very specific scenarios. And in very specific scenarios, if it is only super powerful in those very specific scenarios, you need to have a way to actively get to that card. And in green, that's really difficult. There's not a lot of sorcery tutors in green. And that extends to Gruul and Selesnya as well. You're not going to really find it until you start adding black pips or blue pips into your color pie. You're not going to be able to tutor this card very easily. So you're just going to have to like heart of the cards this shit and just like hope that it comes to you at the right time, which is tough. It's a tough ask.
Totally true.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, totally true. I mean, I think in Gruul, your hope is you don't discard it to a gamble, right? Like that's your only
yeah. If you're down bad,
you're down bad
for this shit.
And then in Selesnya, I think why are you in Selesnya in CEDH?
Wow,
in CEDH,
rude.
In CEDH, I think that's fair.
What is the Enchantress? Is it Sithis? Is that the Enchantress?
Yeah.
I see that. Other than that, is it Elevir?
Elevir sees play, but it's not like.
Yeah,
it's not like. It's. I would say.
Oh, there's also green white Sisay.
Some people like green white Sisay quite a bit.
Yasharn?
Ooh.
Question mark?
Yeah. In our
haven't seen that in
our year 2025.
Haven't seen that in a while. Yeah, not in the year 2025 have I seen that in a while. But anyway, shout out the Selesnya players out there. You're so close to being an Orzhov player, and this is the Orzhov podcast in CEDH. So anyway, my last fringe point is that it's just a little ouchie off Adnaz. So if you're playing a deck that's super turbo and green, it's just gonna hurt, you know. It's like the reason why, like in Korvold, playing Turbo Naz Korvold pre-Dockside ban, like I legitimately did not play Deadly Rollick, even though Korvold was a big part of the plan. I cut Deadly Rollick for a Slaughter Pact, just because the 4 hurts when you're trying to dig deep. That hurts. 4 costs is like 3 cards, so it is a bit of an ouchie off of Naz. Naz is seeing a lot less play. I just made a social media post today, being like, I don't know why, because I started playing Blue Farm the other night, and I was like, why does this Blue Farm list not have Adnaz in it? I'm going to put Adnaz in it. Yeah. But, I mean, that's a completely different discussion for another day. But it's just a little ouchy. That's my fringe point.
I thought that point was going to be that you're giving potentially an Adnaz player potentially one whole other card.
More life?
Right.
Like I mean, that's
six
true.
Life is...
That is
I thought that was your point.
If you're giving 6 life to
that's like at least a card and a half. A card and a half
with Necro or like an Adnaz. No, I would say every 2 life.
So 3 cards almost.
2 life is a card. Yeah, 2 life is a card. Yeah, so or almost 1.5. It depends on the list.
Yeah,
right. I think my average mana value, my average non-land mana value is like 1.7 in Korvold right now, and it was 1.4 or 5 pre-Dockside ban when it was super turbo.
Yeah, it's almost like 3 cards.
It's probably closer to 4 cards than 3 cards. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Thanks. I added to your points. You added to my points. I appreciate you. This is why this podcast rocks.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of, what point of mine did you like the most? Yeah. What's the biggest downside for Reverent Silence?
I think there were 2 points I actually really like. The fact that you pointed out that being in green means you're probably playing 6, which means that if you're looking into a early 6 game plan, this is kind of I milled that away. I might not get that back for a little bit. And then 2, it's hard to tutor.
Ever.
Yeah. It's hard to tutor for.
Yeah.
Right. It's again, if you're in low colors, and you're because like if you're in other colors, assuming you have like if you're in white, black, you have other options, right? Potentially better options than.
I don't think white has any good options for it, but black, yes.
Black for sure, right? And
are you talking about for removing enchantments?
Yeah, for enchantments.
Sorry,
right.
I thought you meant for tutoring.
No, removing
I thought you
enchantments.
Meant for tutoring. Yeah, not for free as a blanket, I don't think, but like there's some spot stuff that works.
Right.
That works a lot better.
But yeah, those are the 2 points.
A sweeper of enchantments is
I don't think they're
pretty rare.
I don't know if there are any.
Well, it reminds me a lot. I mean, in green there is another one, Back to Nature. It's one of my favorite tech pieces. And we might as well talk about it. So in comparison, now I'll bring it up. There is another fun card that's very similar to this that I've considered and put in my sideboard and actually tested in my list for a while directly after the Dockside bans, which is Back to Nature. Back to Nature is 1 and a green. This is just off the dome. 1 and a green for an instant spell that says destroy all enchantments. I think that's literally all the text says. So that card is really interesting because it specifically is instant speed. That being said, it's 2 mana, and we know CEDH, we've talked about this many times, the difference between free and 2 mana is astronomical.
Right.
It's huge.
Right.
So I get that, but the difference in why you play one of these over the other is just the timing restrictions. Right. So if you don't have a way to enable Flash very well, you might want to consider Back to Nature. If you have ways to enable sorceries into Flash easier, then maybe Reverent Silence is a better option because it's free, quote unquote free,
quote unquote.
You heal 18 to your opponents, but it is what it is.
What point of mind do you think best supports for why you should consider this in the 99?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my heart of hearts says your first point. I'm just like tired of mid-range hell. Blow it up. Like I think it really speaks to me as a player that I want to be a part of the meta developing. I think that innovation is how the meta develops. And if you join up and join the meta, you aren't helping that innovation. And it takes confident people and people willing to try new things and brew new decks to make the meta shift. And it may seem like that's, happening in a very slow pace, but here's the thing. Every few months, I see a new list or a new strategy, like completely come out of nowhere and like take the world by storm, or like a new card just come out of nowhere and take the world by storm. One of those decks that I was like, this is probably going to be good, but I don't know if it's going to be like super good was Glarb. And now Glarb's winning tournaments. So like shout out Logan, by the way, the requester for this card who won Snowy Summit. So shout out. Congratulations. I watched that game, the finals game, by the way. It was really incredible. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on YouTube. So,
okay, definitely.
Check that out. But yeah, it's just like seeing people brew in a different way. And that deck specifically, I might as well point out, is a non-Doomsday Glarb list.
Yeah.
So Logan was very innovative in that sense where he's not even playing the traditional Glarb pile. So being able to have the confidence and courage to break the meta and try new cards is what's going to change our meta. And if you don't like mid-range hell, be part of the solution. Sure, let's do it. I love that point. Yeah, great job.
Thank you. All right, Kyle, it's time. Have we gotten you to change your mind on Reverent Silence? Were you convinced, is this a good card?
Drum roll, please. The answer is yes.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, shockingly. Because I like free shit. Here's the thing, especially in my list, like I just feel like when you're drawing a lot of cards, like you want to be able to take these game actions, right? And being able to take a lot of game actions. So like if I'm storming off and I'm drawing into a bunch of cards, yeah, sure, I'm just going to fire this off. In my head, I'm sitting here, and by the way, listeners, before this podcast, I texted I already bought a copy of this card because I didn't have a copy of it. I had it printed off on a piece of paper, like I had it written down, but I looked, I did not have a copy of it. So I already bought it for testing. So maybe I was a little biased. Maybe I've already decided before this pod that I was going to be testing it a little bit more. But that being said, when we had our conversations about it, I was more convinced. And I like my own downside actually also convinced me slightly, where in Corvold specifically, I'm always using Veils to protect myself, but they always get countered, right? And a lot of times it's just burning a counter spell, and that's fine. So if this card is literally just like on my storm turn, I'm like drawing into cards, and then I'm like, cool, I'm going to cast this Reverent Silence for free, and everybody goes, oh, okay, fine, Fierce. I'm like, great, that's one less Fierce I have to worry about. I'm going to keep storming. So I like that it's free. Another card that I've been playing a lot that is free that has felt really good on the turns that I'm winning is Summoner's Pact. Maybe we'll do a podcast on that someday. But Summoner's Pact is just 0 cost. Go tutor for a green creature and put it into your hand. Reveal it and put it in your hand. So, like, that to me... and
then there's an upkeep cost later on, like a Pact of Negation.
Yeah, exactly. Just relevant. Like a Pact of Negation, there's a 2 and 2 green upkeep, or you lose the game. So it's really bad. But that being said, I almost never cast that card unless I'm like actively trying to win the game.
Yep.
So it doesn't come up very often where I have to pay it because I either die or I win.
Yeah.
But that being said, that card's super cool because like every time I draw it when I'm storming, I'm like, cool, I can just play this. I'm just going to play it. You know, it's really nice to have free spells to cast.
So nice.
Especially one that's going to eat a Force of Will or eat a Force of Negation or eat a Flusterstorm when you're just going to go do something else anyway. So I like it. I'm going to test it because especially in my meta right now, there's just a ton of enchantments and I think it can be really powerful. So sure, let's try it out.
Please let me know what the reaction is the first time you cast this thing at a tournament. Like,
I hope it's against you. I hope I see C1
yeah,
on
chances
the play,
are.
play
Chances
his
are.
Mystic Study, and I'll be in seat 4 and I'm going to go, yeah, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
No. Blow it up.
Boom, reverent silence.
Blow
and then I'm
it
going to
up.
hear a reverent silence from you, which is your sadness. because
Tired
you
of the
didn't
mid-range meta?
mulligan for any other
Blow it
plan
up.
besides jam
Yada,
Ristic
jam.
turn 1.
Yep.
That's the other thing. Yo, okay, let's talk about that too slightly.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of deep into the pod, but like people have been moaning and complaining
Yep.
about the fact that Ristic Study or Fish make mulligans easy because you literally just like, can you play a turn 1? Yes, okay, keep the hand, right? If that's the case and you're hitting people early with this
Oh.
and they don't have a plan,
You screw them.
oh, chef's kiss.
Oh my gosh. That's got to feel
Chef's
so good.
kiss, right? It's going to feel incredible. So, like, if they kept a hand that's just like all lands with a Simian Spirit Guide and a Soul Ring and a Ristic Study, and they're like, cool, I can turn 1 Ristic.
Yeah,
And
and
they
then I'm
only
set.
have lands in their hand.
Right.
Oh. And then
Oh.
you destroy it. Oh my God. They're so screwed. They're so screwed. Anyway, good points. Good points, y'all. I liked what you brought to the table. All right.
It's time.
It's time for our favorite closing segment. That's a good card? Question mark?
Question mark.
We weren't very synchronized on that one, y'all. Before the VOD, I literally talked to you about how somebody in the comments was impressed with our synchronization on the last episode, and we blew it.
I'm so oppositional. I'm so defiant sometimes. I'm so sorry.
You are. You're just an agent of chaos. Anyway. Listeners, if you haven't played this game with us, what we like to do is we like to finish off the podcast with a little game where Ya will be providing the name of an obscure magic card to me, and it'll be my job, as well as yours, the listener, to guess everything about this card. Color, type, cost, flavor text, art, everything, any ability it might have. So go ahead and pause the video or pause the podcast right after Ya gives us the card. Go ahead and make your guess. Type your guess in the comments. Help us out, especially on YouTube. It helps out a ton when we get people commenting. And I'll take this time as well to thank you all for commenting because a lot of
Thank you.
I see you commenting consistently every week, and it just means so much. Every time I see you comment, it helps us so much and it helps us grow. Thank you. Anyway, all right, yeah, I'm ready for the card. What do you got for us today?
All right.
Hit me.
Here it is. Cyclopean Tomb.
Cyclopean Tomb. That sounds like a place to be, aka land. So this is definitely a land.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably it's either lands aren't colored, so there's no color in it, but it could tap for a color. Cyclopean Tomb. Let's do artistry first. I'm seeing like a big sarcophagus, like a mummy, like a pharaoh, but instead of a pharaoh on top, it's just like this big chunky, like thumb-shaped head with like a big eye engraved on it, like a big cyclops singular eye on the tomb. With like some big steps leading up to it. And it's going to be a land. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped.
Okay.
It's going to tap for 2 mana of any color, but only use this mana to cast giant spells. Or Cyclops spells, if Cyclops are a thing in Magic. I don't think they are. I'm going to go with giant because I know giants are spells. So I'm going to say to cast giant spells. There's going to be another ability on it. It's going to be 5 colorless and a black. Tap it. Sacrifice Cyclopean Tomb. Return target creature with power greater than 5 from your graveyard to your hand.
To your hand for 5? I think that's got to at least go to the battlefield.
It's so bad.
Wow.
Nope, to the hand. It's so bad.
Whoa.
All right. I was really off on this one, but I was having fun until I wasn't.
I think,
AKA that last ability probably doesn't deserve to be on it, but it's fine. We're rocking with it.
I think your description of the art, pretty spot on, right? It's literally a giant eyeball, except there's like this person where the pupil is right in the very center. Kyle will put the art on up right now. So, Cyclopean Tomb is a 4-cost mono artifact. It has a activation cost of 2 and tap it. All right, ready? Everybody strap in. It says, put a mire counter on target non-swamp land. That land is a swamp for as long as it has a mire counter on it. Activate only during your upkeep. When Cyclopean Tomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, at the beginning of each of your upkeeps for the rest of the game, remove all mire counters from a land that a mire counter was put onto with Cyclopean Tomb, but that a mire counter has not been removed from with Cyclopean Tomb. That is technically eroded, so it was even more confusing than what you just heard.
What the hell?
Mm-hmm.
You lost me after like the 6th word. I have no idea what you just said. That's crazy.
So basically,
I'm gonna put it. I mean, it's already up on the screen for the listeners. Everyone's so confused right now. We're all rioting. Everybody at this point has probably already commented that they love my version better and that they're already talking to WotC and in talks about.
No, dude, this is an alpha card. This is an alpha. This might be the most expensive card we've ever brought.
I am seeing that. I'm seeing right now that it is like 1,700 euros if I wanted to buy one right now.
You know, the fun thing, the original printing of this card, it was printed without a mana cost. On the beta, they decided to make it a 4-cost. Crazy.
Wait, what?
Yeah, if you look at Scryfall and you go down to the limited edition alpha, it'll say printed without a mana cost. And there's no mana cost on it. Yeah, and then if you look at the beta, they eroded this thing to have a 4-cost. Probably because I think that if you think about it, like now you can play with only like islands, and then all of a sudden for two, you can make your lands also a swamp. So now you have dual lands for the cost of 2 for nothing, for the cost of nothing to invest originally, and it also makes this
what a weird card.
Because like you're basically making a land not a swamp in order to return this from the graveyard to the battlefield. I know, this is the most discussion we've ever had on any one of these cards. Weird. This is such a weird card.
I might put my face on the screen of like just my confusion while you were reading this card.
I got confused reading it, and I had already read it 3 times in order to make sure I could read all of this.
F. All right. Yeah, my brain's in a pretzel. It's late at night when we're recording this. I don't even know what it does. Turns things into swamps. Boring. My version's way cooler. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for listening to today's episode on Reverent Silence, and huge thank you to Logan as well as Bunny Joe Burton for recommending this wonderful card to us. We had a lot of great discussions for it, so I'm excited to test this card, and thank you so much for the recommendation. Listeners, please direct your attention down below to links in our description to our link tree, where you'll find everywhere we post our podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as links to our Discord, which has been popping recently. We have so many people in there. It's awesome. We have discussions every day, so please come and join us. Join the community. We talk about everything in there. We talk about CEDH. We'll talk about your builds. We'll talk about whatever you want. So hop in there if you're looking for a CEDH community. It's a super fun place to be. All right. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and we will see you next Monday. Bye.
Bye.